Hi, my name is Will Echevarria, and today I'm going to be talking about the Palestinians. Now, Palestine is located in the southern Levant between the Mediterranean Sea and the Jordan River. Currently within the region, there are Israel and Palestinian territories. There are various adjoining lands surrounding Palestine, such as Europe, Asia, and Africa. This area is also the birthplace of Judaism and Christianity. Palestine has a long and turbulent history for religion, culture, commerce, and politics. This region or parts of it have been controlled by numerous different people and regional powers including the Canaanites, Egyptians, Israelites, Philistines, Greeks, Romans, and many other groups throughout history. This region is most commonly known as the Holy Land of Israel or the Holy Land. Interestingly, Palestine was among the earliest in the world to see human habituation, agricultural communities, and civilization. To get a better understanding of this region and history, the periods are broken down into the Ancient Period, the Roman Period, the Middle Ages, the Ottoman era, and the Modern Era. Now, the first Palestinian immigrants arrived in the U.S. after 1908. Most of these first immigrants to arrive were Christians escaping persecutions in the Ottoman Palestine era in the late 19th century. Palestinian emigration began to decline after 1924, with a law limiting the number of immigrants as well as the Great Depression. The population began to increase after World War II, the Arab-Israeli War, the Nakba, and the foundation of the State of Israel in 1948 caused many Palestinians to emigrate, most as refugees. Now, the largest wave of Palestinian immigration began in 1967 after the Six-Day War, also known as the June War. This wave of immigration reached its peak in the 1980s. Most Palestinians that immigrated in this time frame were more educated compared to the arrival of the wave in 1967. This was due to the United Nations and an increased number of universities in the Middle East. Currently, the New York City metropolitan area, including northern New Jersey, is home to the largest Palestinian population in the U.S. In fact, Paterson, New Jersey, has been nicknamed Little Ramallah and contains a neighborhood with an Arab American population estimated as high as 20,000 in 2015. According to the 2000 U.S. Census, there were 72,112 people of Palestinian ancestry living in the U.S. and has increased to 85,186 people between 2009 and 2013, according to the American Community Survey. Now, aside from this, most Palestinians have settled in other metropolitan areas such as Chicago, Cleveland, California, Phoenix, Detroit, and Miami. They reside with other Mediterranean communities include Lebanese, Syrians, Greeks, Italians, Egyptians, and Turks. Now, there wasn't much information on Palestinians in Wisconsin with the exception of the Islamic Society of Milwaukee. On their site, they state that Muslim presence in the Milwaukee area can be traced back to the 1950s. Those who settled in Milwaukee were only students or peddlers, as they remained here temporarily. Over the years, the Islamic Society of Milwaukee were open to all individuals, regardless of their country, origin, or background. The community it has formed takes pride in the fact that it has been able to successfully incorporate its varied cultures, ethnicities, and races into its institutions. The Muslims that make up the Milwaukee area trace their origins to more than 30 countries. Now, the Palestinian culture is a blend of Eastern Mediterranean influences. These commonalities are shared with Levantine people, including Egyptians, Lebanese, Syrians, and Jordanians. The language spoke by Palestinians is Palestinian Arabic, with Hebrew being a secondary language spoken by most. Now, within the U.S., approximately 46% of the Palestinians have obtained at least a college degree in comparison to 18% of the American population. Within higher education, the study of Arabic culture and language has become increasingly important to the Palestinians. Some of their organizations in the U.S. are working on teaching the proper history of Arab history and culture in American schools. Now, in my research, I came across a research article where a Palestinian student identified his culture according to Hofstede's theory, his cultural background being Palestinian. Now, he elaborates on the five dimensions, which are power distance, masculinity versus femininity, collectivism versus individualism, long versus short-term orientation, and uncertainty avoidance. Now, when it comes to a higher power distance, the Palestinian culture reflects a high to moderate distance mostly within south of Palestine. A great example of this is the idea of obedience of sons to their fathers is something that is considered non-negotiable within their culture. Another example is the relationship roles that are established between husband and wife. Within this culture, the male is the dominant figure. The student elaborates further on the power distance by stating, with regards to politics and power, I can say that there is a clear validation of this dimension in our culture, especially in decision makings and some political behaviors. Now, when it comes to the second dimension of masculinity versus femininity, Palestine is considered a masculine country. To justify this claim, it is noticed that occupation plays a crucial role in this issue. With regard to employment, 93% of the women are literate and educated, but they cover about 17% of the labor works, and the rest are on the men. Also, we barely see or hear women occupy higher positions in Palestinian culture or society, and if this does occur, it is considered questionable. Now, in terms of the third dimension, Palestine has a collectivistic cultural norms and values, which makes it a tight community or society. The pronoun we is frequently used. Now, a majority of Palestinian societal features present very strong commitments from the individual to his family first and his nation in general. Within the Islamic community teachings, the people of Palestine are committed to their teachings and instructions, and they encourage people to get together, be helpful, and cooperate together, as this is considered the key success to life. Now, most Arab societies, including Palestine, demonstrate short-term orientation. Within this dimension, the values show rationality, immediate results, and preservation of current financial and social stability. They are more rigid in their thinking. This is a very clear and common since the two main factors are religion and values. Now, the final dimension is uncertainty avoidance. The Palestinian culture shows a high uncertainty avoidance. The religious teachings set certain laws and ways in dealing with ambiguity and other unknown things that may occur, such as death and fate. Overall, this article helped understood Palestinian culture from Hofstede's theory, and if any are interested in reading the entire article, I'll post it later within the discussion forum. Now, according to the Journal of Palestine Studies in 1989, Palestinian Americans have adapted quickly and successfully to American society. Alienation is rare amongst Palestinian Americans, but it does exist for a small portion of the population. Older Palestinians that have come to America with grown children who support them tend to be most alienated because they do not need to learn English to survive. They tend to socialize amongst themselves and generally have the least amount of contact with American culture. Women more than men are mostly hidden from mainstream U.S. culture, and they have the primary role in teaching the ways of their culture to their children. Others simply uphold their traditions and reject the more open and liberal Western society. They oppose much of the open culture, such as open sexuality, divorce, drugs and alcohol, all for religious and cultural reasons. Some worry about the impact of American culture, so it is not uncommon for the children, especially girls, to be sent back to the Middle East for education, especially during the teenage years. Many Palestinian Americans retain a Palestinian identity while identifying themselves as Americans first and foremost. Now, Palestinian Americans have generally had a smooth transition to the culture of the U.S. Many still feel unsettled because of tensions in their homeland, and specifically the lack of a Palestinian state. Studies of Palestinian Americans report that few say they have been the subject of overt discrimination based on their ethnicity. However, many say that they are often made to feel foreign or not fully American. Certain people they encounter want to classify them as Arab as if they were incompatible with being an American. Some Palestinian Americans also find that they are accepted personally, but that a distinction is drawn between them and their people in the Middle East. Many Americans apparently identify Palestinians with a few extremists who commit terrorist acts to publicize the plight of Palestine or to discredit by association the moderate factions they oppose. Now, the Palestinians in the U.S. resent this characterization, and they often fault with the media coverage of the Arab-Israeli conflict, which in their view does not enough to educate the public about their history and the injustices they continue to suffer. In my research, I came across an article that goes into detail about how mental health services are needed within the Palestinian population. Relating back to the history, Palestine has always been known to be in a state of conflict. Many Palestinians end up living in unstable environments and experience dramatic changes and are often persecuted and victims of discrimination and injustice. Religion is a key role in many aspects of lifestyles and political issues. The Islamic model of healthcare has been influenced by the cultural context, and it is seen as inseparable from Islamic views. Further within the article, it is stated there is a near absence of effective mental health research, and the mental health services are grossly underdeveloped, with stigma attached to those experiencing mental illness. Now, the developmental challenges of mental health care vary from country to country, influenced by their income. In addition, other factors have determined the efficacy of mental health services, including political decisions, social factors, and the specific diversity of cultures. The Arab countries have tried to develop their model of care in mental health services. They're trying to improve research in the mental health field and to train higher numbers of qualified professionals. They are also trying to move toward deinstitutionalization models as they are trying to become independent and autonomous by suggesting more suitable ways of caring within the modern Muslim culture. Now, after 1967, mental health services for Palestinians in West Bank and Gaza were managed by the Israeli government and became neglected and underdeveloped. There is a significant lack of finances, management structure, and human resources that also inhibited the quality of mental health services. Overall, the mental health system has been affected negatively by the political conflict, and this is thought to increase more challenges for Palestinians in their daily routines. Further within the literature, the main findings of PTSD and traumatic experiences are prevalent amongst children and adolescents as they live in these dangerous areas. It is estimated to be 23 to 70%. Now, when these children come to the U.S., it still goes largely unaddressed due to a cultural and religious beliefs. Also, within the culture, trauma is mostly interpreted according to a specific collective meanings more than an individual's experience. Now, in tying all of this together, when working with this population, one should assess for trauma amongst this population as the research shows that this is prevalent. One should also be aware of the lack of resources of this population's homeland due to political conflicts and try to focus on building rapport first, as mental health services aren't seen as a priority. Lastly, as seen with Hofstede's theory, one should consider the collectivist view as it is inherently important in this culture when working with this population. Thank you for listening, and here are my sources.